Desert Tex? I asked. A £2 a gun? Yes, he said. And I was the fastest bloody runner in the 8th Army.
Second Lieutenant Gunn was so accurate that at least 2 enemy tanks were hit and set on fire before he fell dead. But for his very gallant action, the enemy tanks would undoubtedly have overrun our position.
It was not a victory.
Bombarded the area for over 6 hours.
Are we going to fire?
A searchlight bursts into action. One single beam sweeping the sky.
Oh, please, God, let us fire.
And now, for the first time since the raid started, we see a ring of bursting anti-aircraft shells all around the city. It's come as a shock to the raiders.
Tomorrow. We didn't think of tomorrow. Even the youngest of us knew that life was short. That there might not be.
Guns into action.
None of us had the slightest doubt that you were here to stop the end of the war.
We may allow ourselves a brief period of rejoicing. But let us not forget for a moment the toil and effort that lie ahead. Japan, with all her treachery and greed, remains unsubdued. The injuries we had inflicted.
Forward observers have always been the officers of any gunner unit. The gunners command their guns from in front. The Auster came into the gunners in 1939. It was really nothing more than a means of getting your best observation officers higher up so that they could do the job better. The officer did everything. Flew the aircraft, gave the order to fire, and spotted the fall of shell.
Aggression has started again in the Far East. The attack by the armed forces of North Korea on South Korea.
It was easier to train an artillery officer to fly than an Air Force officer to control artillery machinery.
The fire has been started in distant Korea. May burn down your house.
Switches off, fuel on, throttle closed, brakes hard off. Top down.
Rocket could not possibly have the accuracy to justify further expenditure of funds. At this time, we ran into a Texan making statements hard to believe. Why, around these parts, I'm called Honest John. I felt Honest John would be an appropriate nickname.
The nuclear warheads were kept at 3 special compounds in Germany. The British were never allowed inside the compound. After 2 or 3 years, we were allowed into one bunker under heavily armed guard.
Counterintelligence was a real threat.
The Soviets' first priority would be to eliminate Allied nuclear weapons. They wanted to know where you were and what you were up to.
We spent an enormous amount of time laid up in hides in the middle of woods. All operations took place after dark under pinpoint torchlight.
The whole atmosphere of the operation was claustrophobic. Once you introduce a nuclear element into an operation, it becomes a lot slower and a lot less fun.
Nobody had any doubt that if hostilities had increased in Eastern Europe, battlefield nuclear weapons would have been deployed.
Deterrence relies on intelligence for its effectiveness. Enemy intelligence is useful in this respect.
I often wondered what would happen if the Russians were actually advancing.
The Iraqi artillery. He has a proven counter-battery capability from the Iran-Iraq war. We know that he will shoot back if he can.
The climate hits you. Heat, more heat, and very cold at night.
Every 4 hours, we were taking a NAPS tablet. It was supposed to build your body up to resist nerve-agent poisoning. Then they'd be violently ill from day one, those tablets.
Rained until the early afternoon. Then a sandstorm, the worst one yet. We knew he had chemical weapons. We knew he wasn't afraid to use them.
If they fired a chemical shell, you've got 9 seconds to get mastered.
We were sleeping in and around the gun, in sleeping bags. Maybe we'd build a lead to. And that's all we had. You look around for a minute and think, are all these guys going to come back with me? But it's a split second. You've got a job in hand and the job turns out. Job VIP! Let's kick it!
It's the most intensive barrage by the Royal Artillery since World War II.
Extreme, I rock a mic like a vandal. Light up a stage and watch the chump like a candle. Dance!
We did our job, and then after we did our job, we saw the human side.
Can't wait to leave this place.
You can't help but think. Some of these people, what have they been through? There was a Serb unit massing in Adichie to retake the mountain from us. Although we hadn't fired at that point, it wouldn't have been hard to work out where we were.
With British guns pointing at Serb positions, the UN is rattling the saber louder than ever before. But the big question remains, does the West have the willpower to use its firepower?
The Bosnian Serb had artillery pieces, but they couldn't concentrate artillery like we did.
We were under fire from the beginning. All the targets were so real. Double-checked all the time. There was no margin for error. You could tell where people were because they were always bloody firing.
We, in our haste, can only see the small components of the scene. The small group is what matters in war. You and your mates around you. We cannot tell what the incidents will focus on the final scene. The future is unpredictable. A barrage of disruptive sound. Whatever it holds, the gunners will be there. That'll fall on a sleeping face. Everywhere. Both must be noted. Both must take their place.
2 weeks into this mission, the Royal Artillery are flying their 105mm light guns from Oslo.
The ideal party for
They come in at about £2 million a time. So this is the AS-90. It's got 155mm shell. It's got a range of about 18 miles. But it's got supercharged, it can go 25, 30. It's well reading. It's being hoisted up on a great low loader, and one of the strops broke and it dropped it, smashed it, twisted it, and no good for battlefield anymore. So we got it as a museum piece, but all the clever bits have been taken out. Those are Poland. But what they're after is the turret and the guns. The guns, it takes years for people to sell. They've got to go and buy them and do. But in between times, this is stuff. Anybody know what this is called? It does. This is what you pull this red pin out, and it drops on the floor, then you reverse the system back on it, and it ploughs itself into the ground. And the idea is then, after that, that's about 40% of all recoil, you know, when the gun comes back. A lot of those goes back like this when I was a boy. Yeah, I've got an MG Sports car and all sorts of things, it's lovely. Yeah, we was working on this in 1962, and it's well received. America actually bought 600 of them, so it proves it's pretty reasonable. They're using it themselves. You see this generally in films and photographs being slung under helicopters. They used it quite a lot. The Land Rover generally tows it. You turn it around 180 degrees, the barrel, then it's obviously only half the size. But the thing is, you've got to take the wheel. Perhaps they don't realise. But nonetheless, it's a very good bit of kit. I think there's about 2,000 of those been made. India's got them. There's about 15, 20 countries have actually. This was started to be designed in 1943 in answer to all the German tanks that was giving us a thrashing in the desert. 1943 they started to design it, and it was being designed here at Woolwich, when this used to be the Royal Ordnance Factory. The tank design office was set up here in about 1916, and the first now. In fact, now it's all a housing estate, but there used to be a big tank testing track. And that got picked up stone by stone and rebuilt in its exact fashion back down at MVE Chobham. But this one, there's getting off for 20,000 of these produced. It's got the reputation of being the most, I suppose, the vehicle or the weapon that's been in the most wars. Since World War II, this has been in all the Arab conflicts in one way or the other, all the Israeli conflicts, wherever we've been, whether it's been Korea, Bosnia, wherever, there's always been a course cavalry. Had a massive bulldozer on the front and a great big 165mm demolition gun. The idea was it just once you fired the projectile, if you open up the breech, the last thing you want is
acrid smoke.
Yeah. So because there's different method of plungers and little valves in there, the smoke goes up and it's sucked out, not being sucked out. You'd expect to see that on a dreadnought, wouldn't you? Yeah. They certainly make big kit. It's really good. That spade system again. Got recoil system. You could fire anything. Chemical, nuclear, biological, high explosive. You can do it. Square on it. Any other way, I suppose, is to hit the top of it and see if it is. I don't know. But I'm told with all authority that this nuclear, just one of these, could take out Leeds. But what happened in the Cold War, anything within the periphery of the M25 was considered a target by Russia, wherever. I reckon there's getting on for 400 of these targeted to the M25.
Very low.
So, this is our unmanned surveillance system. We know now the Americans have got these incredible bits of kit, and we've got some new ones. This is now obsolete. It's no longer in army service. It's a bit of a strange thing. It's a committee designed thing. It's all sorts of cannons, stuff that I wouldn't even understand, not at all. But that is a collaborative venture between Britain, Germany and Italy. It's got a 155mm barrel. It's like the one you've seen in the museum, the longest gun there, the FH-70. That's got the same recoil system, nearly, but it's the same barrel. Now the idea was to have a self-propelled 155mm gun, like the AS-90 at the front door. The only trouble was that everybody wanted their fashion, whether it's Italian, German or British. And after spending 90 million quid, they built 3. Move on.